was in the kitchen making a pot of chili when my daughter Melissa came home shouting into her phone. At 34 years old, she still lived with me. She claimed it was to take care of me, but I knew it was because she couldn't afford to pay her own bills. That day, she was furious because her ex-husband David was late again with the child support payment for my grandson, Nathan, who was just 9 years old. When I turned off the stove and turned to ask her if she wanted lunch, Melissa exploded. "You filthy old woman. Can't you see I'm on the phone?" And then something happened that I never thought I would experience. She spat in my face. The saliva slid down my cheek as she continued to scream. "You're useless. Just in the way. You should have just stayed quiet in your corner." I wiped my face with my apron. I swallowed the humiliation and didn't say a single word. My blood ran cold. What's wrong with my grandson? He's very sad, He keeps asking about you. He says you left because he behaved badly. His mother told us you are sick, but Nathan insists you are fine and that you left because you're mad at him. Melissa's manipulation knew no bounds. "Ms. Parker," I said in a controlled voice. "My grandson did nothing wrong. I had to get away from a very difficult situation at home, but that has nothing to do with Nathan. Would it be possible for you to write him a letter? The boy needs to know it's not his fault." That same afternoon, I sat down to write the most difficult letter of my life. I explained to Nathan in words he could understand that sometimes adults have to make tough decisions, that I loved him more than anything in the world, but that I needed to be in a place where I was treated with respect. I told him that when he was older, he would understand better. But in the meantime, I wanted him to know that he had done nothing wrong. The next day, Mr. Harrison called me with information I wasn't expecting. "Mrs. Chen, Melissa is trying to locate you. She hired a private investigator." The news made me nervous. Can she do that legally? "She can try, but you are an adult in full command of your faculties. You are not obligated to say where you live or to receive unwanted visitors." That afternoon, I spoke with William about my fears. "Isabel, if you want to be more at ease, you can stay here as long as you need. This city is big, and besides, no one is looking for you for committing a crime. You simply decided to leave your house." During those weeks in Madison, I began to rediscover who I was before I became the long-suffering mother who put up with everything. I started getting up when I wanted to, not because someone needed me. I had quiet breakfasts, reading the entire newspaper, not just the headlines while rushing to make lunch. In the afternoons, I walked around the city, visited museums, sat in cafes with a cappuccino, and watched people go by. It was incredible to realize how much I had stopped doing to please a daughter who never appreciated my sacrifices. One morning while I was sunbathing in the garden, Susan sat next to me with a serious expression. "Isabel, I have to tell you something. A young woman came by yesterday asking for you. She said she was a market researcher, but I suspect she was the person Melissa hired to find you." My heart raced. "What did you tell her?" "That I had never heard of any Isabel Chen, but I think it's time for you to make a decision. Are you going to stay in hiding forever, or are you going to face the situation?" Susan was right. I had been running for weeks, but I couldn't run forever. That night, I made an important decision. I called Janet in Austin and accepted her invitation. "Janet, is your job offer still open?" "Of course. When can you come?" "Next week." Austin was farther from Chicago. And besides, I would have a job that would keep me active and give me financial independence. I wasn't going to live off the money from the house sale forever. I wanted to save that to ensure Nathan's future when he was older. I wanted to prove to myself and incidentally to Melissa that at 67, I was still capable of starting over. Before leaving Madison, I decided to do something I had been putting off. Call Melissa directly. I dialed her number at 7 in the morning, knowing I would catch her at home. Mom, is that you?" Her voice sounded desperate. "Yes, Melissa, it's me." "Thank God. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm coming to get you right now." "Melissa, I'm not going to tell you where I am, and I'm not coming back." "But Mom, this is absurd. We're family." "Melissa, for years, You treated me as if I were your employee. You stole money from me. You planned to put me in a nursing home. You humiliated me in front of my grandson. That is not being family. Mom, I never. Melissa, don't interrupt me. I'm going to talk and you're going to listen for the first time in years. My voice came out firm without a tremor. I sold the house because I discovered you were stealing money from Nathan's account. I changed my will because I found out you were planning to take my assets. I left because you spat in my face and told me I was a filthy old woman. Do you need me to remind you of anything else? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mom, I was stressed. The divorce, the money problems. Melissa, stress does not justify cruelty, and you had no money problems. You were living rent-free in my house. You were spending my money, and you were working no more than part-time. What about Nathan? Are you going to punish your grandson for my mistakes? It was the question I knew would come, the usual emotional manipulation. Melissa, Nathan is not being punished. He is learning that actions have consequences. That when you hurt the people who love you, you can lose them forever. Mom, please come back. I promise everything will be different. Melissa, for years, you promised me you would change. You promised you would get a stable job, that you would treat me better, that you would be more independent. But the only promises you kept were your threats. You told me I was a nuisance and that I should leave. Well, here is what you asked for. When I hung up the phone, my hands were shaking, but not from fear, but from liberation. It was the first time in years I had spoken to Melissa without apologizing for existing, without begging for her love, without accepting her mistreatment. Susan, who had heard the conversation from the kitchen, came over and hugged me. Isabel, I am so proud of you. You spoke to her like a woman who respects herself. That afternoon, I packed my things to go to Austin. I didn't know what awaited me there, but for the first time in a long time, that uncertainty excited me instead of scaring me. The day before I left, I received a call I wasn't expecting. It was Andrea, but this time she sounded different. Aunt Isabel, I need to tell you something important. Tell me, Andrea. Melissa told me what really happened about Nathan's money, the power of attorney, the spitting incident. Aunt Isabel, I didn't know things were that bad. Andrea, your sister has been treating me like this for years. It didn't start last week. I know, Aunt Isabel, and I'm ashamed because I also thought you were exaggerating when you complained. But now I see it was all true. And you're calling to tell me what, Andrea? To ask for your forgiveness and to tell you that I understand why you left. In your place, I would have done the same, but I probably wouldn't have had your courage. That conversation made me reflect on something important. For years, the whole family had known how Melissa treated me, but no one had done anything to defend me. They had all preferred to believe I was exaggerating, that I was too sensitive, that I misinterpreted things. It was easier to blame the victim than to confront the abuser. Andrea, I told her before hanging up, I hope this experience helps you treat your own mother better because children who see their grandmothers being mistreated learn that it's normal to mistreat their mothers. You're right, Aunt Isabel. I'm going to think a lot about this. The morning of my departure for Austin, as I waited for the bus at the terminal, I looked back one last time. Not at the terminal, but at the entire stage of my life that I was closing. I had been the perfect mother, the perfect grandmother, the woman who always put everyone before herself. And I had ended up being spat in the face by the person I had loved most in the world. But that humiliation had awakened me from a long and painful dream. It had given me back to myself. When I got on the bus to Austin, I wasn't just carrying a suitcase with clothes. I was carrying the wisdom of a woman who had finally learned that self-love is not selfishness, but survival. I arrived in Austin on a Tuesday afternoon, and Janet was waiting for me at the bus station with a smile I hadn't seen in years. Isabel, you look different. More, how can I put it? More yourself. She was right. During the 5-hour journey from Madison, I had felt every mile take me not just further from Melissa, but from the submissive woman I had become. Janet took me directly to her house in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets that reminded me of the America of my youth, when families knew their neighbors and problems were solved with conversations, not screams. The room Janet had prepared for me was small but cozy with a window that overlooked a garden full of jacaranda trees. Isabel, this house is your house for as long as you want. And tomorrow I'll show you the business. You'll see. Working again will do you a world of good. That night, as I unpacked my suitcase for the third time in a month, I realized something important. Each time I moved, I carried fewer material things, but more self-confidence. I no longer needed all those objects that for years I thought defined my identity. My true identity was being reborn from within. Janet's boutique was called Timeless Elegance and specialized in clothing for women over 50. Isabel, there's a huge market of women who want to dress well but can't find clothes appropriate for their age and body, she explained as she showed me the shop. Here, we don't sell clothes for young girls or grandma's muumuus. We sell real elegance. I was thrilled to see the well-cut dresses, the quality blouses, the classy accessories. And what would I do exactly? Attend to clients, help them choose outfits, and above all, use your life experience to advise them. Women our age don't just buy clothes, they buy confidence. My first day at work was a revelation. At 10 o'clock in the morning, a woman of about 60 came in, elegant, but with a sad expression. I'm looking for something for a wedding, she said without much enthusiasm. Is it a happy occasion? I asked as I walked her over to the dresses. It's my eldest son's wedding, but my daughter-in-law didn't want me to come. They invited me in the end, but I feel like I'm crashing. The story hit my heart because I recognized the pain in her eyes. What's your name? Beverly. Beverly, you are not crashing anywhere. You are the mother of the groom. We are going to find you an outfit that makes you feel like the queen you are. We spent an hour choosing the perfect navy blue dress with an elegant cut that enhanced her figure without being over the top. When she tried it on and looked in the mirror, her face changed completely. Is that really me? That's the Beverly who has always been there, I said sincerely. She just needed the right outfit to shine. When she left with her new dress and a radiant smile, Janet told me, Isabel, you have a gift. You don't just sell clothes. You give back self-esteem. That afternoon, I realized that helping other women feel valuable was helping me heal my own wounds. During my first few weeks in Austin, I established a routine that filled me with energy. I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, not because someone forced me to, but because I wanted to start the day. I had a quiet breakfast while reading the news. I walked 15 minutes to the boutique. I worked until 6 o'clock in the evening. And at night, I read or watched movies I liked. On weekends, I explored the city. I visited museums, walked through the historic districts, went to church at the cathedral. It was incredible to rediscover that I had my own tastes, my own opinions, a personality that had been dormant for years. One Saturday morning while having breakfast at a cafe downtown, my phone rang. It was a Chicago number I didn't recognize. I hesitated to answer, but something told me to. Mrs. Isabel Chen. Yes. Who's speaking? I'm Mr. Wilson from Nathan's school. I hope you don't mind me calling, but I got your number from your lawyer, Mr. Harrison. I'm calling because I'm very concerned about Nathan. My heart stopped. What happened to my grandson? Mrs. Chen, the boy has been very depressed since you left. His grades have dropped significantly, he doesn't participate in class activities, and yesterday he told me something that worried me deeply. What did he say? He said that now he understands why his daddy left, because the family is cursed and everyone who loves them ends up leaving. Those words were like a knife in my chest. Mr. Wilson, can I ask you a favor? Can you tell Nathan that his grandmother loves him more than anything in the world and that what happened has nothing to do with him? Of course, Mrs. Chen. But if I may say so, the boy really needs to hear it from you. After hanging up, I sat in that cafe for 2 hours, crying and thinking. Janet found me there at noon, still with my coffee cold and my eyes red. Isabel, what happened? I told her about the call, about Nathan, about the guilt that was eating me alive. Honey, Janet said, taking my hand, you did what you had to do. But maybe it's time to think about Nathan's future. Not going back to that situation, but finding a way to have a relationship with your grandson that doesn't involve being mistreated. That night, I called Mr. Harrison and asked him to arrange supervised visits with Nathan. I want to see my grandson, but not in Melissa's presence and not in a place where she can manipulate the situation. Mrs. Chen, that's perfectly possible. We can arrange meetings at my office or in a neutral place. The first meeting with Nathan took place the following Saturday at a park in downtown Austin. Mr. Harrison had arranged for Nathan to be brought by a social worker, and Melissa was not allowed to be present. When I saw my grandson running toward me, my heart almost stopped. "Grandma! Grandma!" He threw himself into my arms and held me so tight I thought he would never let go. "I missed you so much. Why did you leave? Did I do something bad?" I knelt down to be at his height and looked into his eyes. "Nathan, listen to me very carefully. You did nothing wrong. Nothing at all. Grandma had to leave because some adults were treating me very badly, but that has nothing to do with you. But Mommy says you're sick and that's why you left." "Nathan, I'm not sick. I'm perfectly fine. What happened is that I had to protect myself from people who weren't treating me with respect." The boy looked at me with those intelligent eyes that reminded me so much of myself at his age. "Grandma, can I come live with you?" The question broke my heart. "My love, for now, that's not possible. But what I can promise you is that I will never abandon you. We're going to see each other regularly, and when you're older, you'll understand everything better." We spent 3 hours in that park. We played, we talked, I helped him with some homework he had brought. For those 3 hours, I felt like the grandmother I had always wanted to be, without screaming, without tension, without someone telling me I was too old to play with my grandson. When it was time to say goodbye, Nathan hugged me again. "Grandma, I love you. I love you too, my sweetie. More than you can imagine." As I watched the social worker drive away with Nathan, I felt a deep sadness, but also a strange peace. I had done the right thing. I had saved myself, and in doing so, I was also saving Nathan from growing up thinking it was normal to mistreat the people who love you. During the following months, Nathan and I met every 2 weeks. Sometimes in Austin, sometimes in San Antonio, always in neutral places. Little by little, I saw my grandson return to being the happy, intelligent child he had always been. He told me about school, about his friends, about his dreams. And I told him stories about his grandfather, about my youth, about the family he came from. One day, after 6 months of these meetings, Nathan asked me something I wasn't expecting. "Grandma, why don't you and Mommy talk anymore?" I took a deep breath before answering. "Nathan, sometimes people hurt each other so much that they need to be apart for a while. Maybe someday your Mommy will understand what she did wrong and will apologize. But until that happens, Grandma needs to take care of herself. And if she apologizes, will you forgive her?" The question made me think deeply. "Nathan, forgiveness is something very complicated. Grandma would need to see real changes, not just words. Actions that show she truly understands the damage she caused." Meanwhile, my new life in Austin was flourishing. The boutique was going very well, and I had made new friends among the clients and other business owners in the area. I joined a book club, started taking yoga classes, and even signed up for cooking classes. At 67, I was discovering parts of myself that had been asleep for years. One evening, while I was making dinner in Janet's kitchen, she asked me something that made me reflect. "Isabel, do you ever regret the decision you made?" I thought about it while stirring the sauce. "Janet, I regret that it was necessary. I regret that my relationship with Melissa deteriorated to that point. But I don't regret having saved myself." "And if Melissa showed up here tomorrow, sincerely apologizing, what would you do?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "I guess it would depend on whether her apology came with real changes or if it was just another manipulation." As if the universe had been listening to our conversation, 3 days later I received a call that changed everything. It was Andrea. "Aunt Isabel, I have news. Melissa wants to talk to you. But not by phone. She wants to come to Austin." My heart raced. "Andrea, I don't know if I'm ready for that." "Aunt Isabel, I think you should know that Melissa has been in therapy for 2 months. Nathan's teacher recommended it after seeing the boy's emotional state. Therapy? Yes. And according to what I've seen, she's beginning to understand things she had never seen before. She's not the same Melissa who called you crying months ago. Andrea, therapy doesn't change someone overnight. I know, Aunt Isabel. But maybe it's worth listening to what she has to say. That night, I couldn't sleep. After almost a year of silence, Melissa wanted to talk. Part of me wanted to hear what she had to say. Another part was terrified of falling back into the same patterns, of letting myself be manipulated again. Janet found me in the kitchen at 3 a.m, making chamomile tea. Isabel, what are you thinking? That maybe it's time to close this chapter one way or another. And what does your heart tell you? That I've changed too much to go back to being the woman I was. If Melissa has truly changed, she'll have to accept the new Isabel. If she hasn't, then this conversation will serve to close the door definitively. The next morning, I called Andrea and told her that Melissa could come to Austin, but with conditions. The meeting would be in Mr. Harrison's office, with him present as a witness. It would last no more than 2 hours. And if at any point I felt uncomfortable, I would have the right to end the conversation. 2 weeks later, on a rainy Tuesday, I was sitting in Mr. Harrison's office waiting for Melissa. When she walked through the door, I barely recognized her. She looked thinner, older, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of many sleepless nights. But there was something different in her posture, something less arrogant than I remembered. "Mom," she said in a voice so low I could barely hear her. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." I looked at her without saying anything, waiting for her to continue. Mr. Harrison had advised me to let her talk first, to see what she really wanted to say. "Mom, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know I treated you terribly. I know I stole from you, I humiliated you, I planned to take away your independence." Her voice broke. "I know I spat in your face, and that's something I will never forgive myself for." I remained silent, observing every gesture, every inflection of her voice, looking for signs of sincerity or manipulation. The therapy has helped me understand things about myself that I didn't want to see. About how I became someone cruel, someone who hurt the person who loved her most. "Melissa," I said finally, my voice firm, words are easy. "What has really changed?" She took a paper from her purse. "I got a full-time job. I'm paying rent for a small apartment. I'm no longer living off anyone. And this," she showed me another document, "is a payment plan to return all the money I stole from Nathan's account, with interest." I looked at the documents. They seemed legitimate. "And why now, Melissa? Why change now?" "Because I lost everything, Mom. I lost you, I almost lost Nathan, I lost respect for myself. When I found myself alone in that house that wasn't even mine anymore, when I had to explain to Nathan why his grandmother had disappeared, I realized what a monster I had become. And what do you want from me now? I want you to know that I understand what I did. I want you to know that I'm trying to be a better person, a better mother. And if someday you can forgive me, I want the chance to earn back your love." For 2 hours, we talked like we hadn't in years. Melissa told me about her therapy, about the painful process of recognizing her mistakes, about how she was trying to rebuild her relationship with Nathan. I told her about my new life, about the job I loved, about the independence I had found. At the end of the meeting, Melissa asked me the question I knew was coming. "Mom, would you consider coming back to Chicago?" "No, Melissa," I answered without hesitation. "My life is here now. But that doesn't mean we can't rebuild our relationship on new terms." "What kind of terms?" "Terms where I am treated with respect. Where my decisions are respected. Where my independence is valued. And if I can prove that I've really changed, then maybe, over time, we can have a relationship. But Melissa, it will be a relationship between 2 adult women, not between a mother who tolerates everything and a daughter who abuses that tolerance." When Melissa left Austin, I felt something I hadn't expected. A small spark of hope. Not hope that everything would go back to how it was before, but hoped that maybe, just maybe, we could build something new and healthier. 6 months later, as I write this story in my small apartment in Austin, I can say that life has taken an unexpected turn. Melissa visits me once a month, and each time I see small but real changes in her. She respects my space, she doesn't ask me for money, and most importantly, she treats me with the dignity I always deserved. Nathan spends his school vacations with me, and our relationship has become stronger than ever. He's learning that love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, and that sometimes the people who love you the most are the ones who set the clearest boundaries. I'm not the same Isabel who allowed herself to be spat on in her own kitchen. I'm a woman who has learned that self-respect is not negotiable, that love without respect is not love, and that it's never too late to start over. Sometimes people ask me if I regret the decision I made that morning when I left my house forever. And I always answer the same thing. I regret that it was necessary, but I will never regret having saved myself. Because in saving myself, I also saved my grandson from growing up thinking it was normal to mistreat the people who love you. And that, perhaps, is the greatest gift I could give him. Name is Isabel Chen. I am 67 years old and I have always been a woman of strong character. I raised Melissa alone after my husband Robert left when she was just 6. I worked as a seamstress for 38 years to give my daughter an education and a decent life. I bought this house in our Chicago neighborhood with great sacrifice, always dreaming that one day it would be a home filled with love and respect. But for the last 3 years, ever since Melissa moved back in with me after her divorce, my own house had become a living hell. She treated me like a maid, screamed at me in front of Nathan, and I always kept quiet, thinking of my grandson. In that moment, looking at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, my face still damp with humiliation, something inside me began to awaken. During the afternoon, while Melissa went out to handle her business, leaving Nathan here with me, I kept thinking about everything that had happened. My grandson hugged me and whispered, "Grandma, why does Mommy yell at you so much?" Those innocent words struck me like a bolt of lightning. I realized that Nathan was growing up thinking it was normal to disrespect the elderly, especially women. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea and began to see my situation with clarity. Melissa wasn't here to help me. She was using me. The house was in my name. The bills were paid with my pension. And I also took care of Nathan while she supposedly looked for work. But what they didn't know was that I had far more control over my life than they imagined. And everything was about to change. The next morning dawned grey as if the sky reflected the weight I carried in my soul. Melissa woke up in a bad mood as she almost always did lately and began her routine of complaints while I made breakfast. "This coffee is too strong, Mom. You can't even make a decent cup of coffee anymore," she said without even looking at me, her eyes glued to her phone. Nathan came running into the kitchen, his school uniform on crooked, and when I bent down to straighten his shirt, he said quietly, "Grandma, I dreamed we went to live somewhere else where we were happy." His words went straight to my heart. That 9-year-old boy already felt the tension in the house, the heaviness of the atmosphere, the constant disrespect toward his grandmother. While they ate breakfast, I stood by the stove, observing the scene that repeated every morning. Melissa scrolling through her social media, completely ignoring her son, who was trying to tell her about a school assignment. "Mom," the teacher said. "I have to make a family tree," Nathan said enthusiastically. Later, Nathan, "Can't you see I'm busy?" Melissa replied without looking up. "But Mommy," I said later. The boy fell silent, his cereal spoon halfway to his mouth, and I felt my heart ache. It was always like this. Melissa had completely lost connection with what was truly important, her own son. After walking Nathan to school, I returned home to find Melissa on the phone in my bedroom, rummaging through my drawers. "Yeah, Carla, the house is in a great location," she was saying to her friend. "You know how old people are. They always exaggerate their ailments. When she has to go to the nursing home, I can finally fix this place up the way it should be." She noticed I had arrived but wasn't fazed. On the contrary, she continued talking as if I wasn't there. "The neighborhood is gentrifying fast. This house will be worth double in a few years." That afternoon, sitting in my favorite armchair in the living room where I had sewn for so many years to give her everything she needed, I understood that the time had come to stop being the silent victim of my own story. The following weeks were a painful revelation of how my family truly saw me. Melissa had invited her sister Andrea to dinner one Sunday, and I was excited, thinking we would have a quiet family meal. I made a standing rib roast, both of their favorite dish since they were girls. I set the table with my best china and put on my navy blue dress, the one that always looked elegant. But when Andrea arrived, the two of them locked themselves in Melissa's room to talk privately. From the kitchen where I was washing dishes, I could overhear snippets of their conversation that made my blood run cold. "Melissa, I totally get it," Andrea was saying in that condescending tone she had always used. "Look at how I live with George peacefully without having to take care of Mom 24/7. You've done your part. She had her life. Now it's your turn to live yours." I heard them laugh. And then Melissa replied, "Sometimes I feel like I live in a museum, Andrea. I can't move anything, can't change anything, and on top of that, I have to be grateful all the time because it's her house. I feel like a teenager again." "Exactly," Andrea continued. "And besides, how long is this going to last? Old people live into their 90s now. Can you imagine another 20 years of this?" My hands trembled as I dried the same plate over and over. These were my two daughters, the girls I had raised with so much love, talking about me as if I were a burden, an obstacle to their happiness. In that moment, I understood that it wasn't my paranoia. They truly saw me as an inconvenience. When they came out of the room and sat at the table, they acted as if nothing had happened. "Oh, Mom, that roast smells delicious," Melissa said with a fake smile. "Isn't it true that nobody makes a roast like Grandma Isabel?" Andrea added, picking up Nathan. But I had already seen them without their masks. I had heard their true feelings. And that night, I lay awake until very late, feeling something inside me break that would never be the same again. In the following days, I noticed things I had previously overlooked or justified with excuses, like when Melissa would have friends over and introduce me by saying, "This is my mom. She lives here with me." As if I were a temporary guest in my own home. Or when Nathan wanted me to read him stories and Melissa would interrupt. "Let your grandma rest, Nathan. She's too old to be playing with you." And I would wonder, since when did taking care of my grandson become a burden? Since when did my age become a limitation on love? One morning, while hanging laundry in the yard, I overheard Melissa talking to a neighbor about retirement homes. "Yes, Mrs. Peterson, that assisted living facility in Northbrook is very nice. My cousin put her mother-in-law there and says they take great care of her. You have to think about these things, right? We can't be selfish with our parents." The neighbor replied with something I couldn't hear, but I saw Melissa nod and smile. When I went back into the house, she had already hung up the phone and acted as if nothing had happened. "Mom, don't you think you need more exercise? You could go to those senior yoga classes," she told me in a tone that was meant to be caring, but that I now recognized as manipulative. That afternoon, while Melissa went to pick up Nathan from school, I decided to go through my important papers. It had been years since I'd looked at them all, always trusting that everything was in order. But when I opened the safe where I kept my documents, I found something that left me speechless. Several papers had been moved, some were photocopied, and there were new documents that I didn't remember signing. Among them was a power of attorney that gave Melissa access to my bank accounts in case of a medical emergency. I didn't remember signing it, but there was my signature. I sat on the edge of my bed, documents in hand, and understood that my daughter had been preparing to take control of my life without consulting me for some time. That night at dinner, I observed my family with new eyes. Melissa chewed mechanically while scrolling on her phone. Nathan tried to tell me about his day at school, and I responded with automatic smiles while my mind processed the new reality. "Grandma, are you okay? You look sad," my grandson asked with that sensitivity children have for knowing when something is wrong. "I'm fine, my love. Just a little tired," I lied, stroking his dark, shiny hair. Melissa looked up for a second. "Mom, if you're feeling sick, you should go to the doctor. At your age, anything could be serious." But in her tone, there was no genuine concern, but rather the expectation that I was in fact sick, as if that would justify the plan she already had in mind. The next day was Saturday, and Melissa announced she would be out all day with friends. "Mom, can you watch Nathan? You know, I need to unwind a bit." As always, it wasn't a question, but a statement. I nodded, as I had for years. But this time, there was something different in my silence. While she got ready to go out, singing along to Taylor Swift songs she knew by heart, I watched her every move. She put on makeup with expensive products I didn't know how she could afford on her part-time job. She put on new clothes that seemed to appear in her closet every week. When she left, leaving Nathan watching cartoons, I sat down to check the bank accounts online. What I discovered took my breath away. Melissa had had access to my main account for 6 months and had been regularly withdrawing money, small amounts that I hadn't noticed. $50 here, $80 there, always with justifications that sounded reasonable when she told me, "Mom, I need it for Nathan's medicine. The washing machine broke and we need to fix it. The car needs urgent service." But adding up all those emergencies, she was taking almost half of my pension every month. And worst of all, she had found a way to also access the savings account I had opened for Nathan's college education. My grandson had an account with $20,000 that I had saved by working extra hours for years. And Melissa had already withdrawn $4,000 without my authorization. I sat there in front of the computer, my stomach churning. It wasn't just the money. It was the betrayal, the disrespect, the way she had been deceiving me while telling me she loved me. Nathan came running over. "Grandma, can you make me a grilled cheese?" His cheerful little voice contrasted with the bitterness I felt at that moment. I picked him up, kissed his forehead, and made him his favorite grilled cheese sandwich with a side of tomato soup. While he ate happily, I made a decision that would change everything. I would no longer be the submissive grandmother who let herself be robbed and humiliated. I was 67 years old, but my mind was clearer than ever, and it was time to show them what it meant to lose someone who truly loved them. In the days that followed, I maintained my normal routine. But inside, everything had changed. Every morning, I woke with a determination I hadn't felt in years. When Melissa yelled at me, I would simply nod and continue with my activities. When she asked for money for her important expenses, I gave her what I had on hand without question. But in the afternoons while she was out and Nathan was at school, I began to make very important calls. First, I called my cousin William, who lives in Madison, and explained my situation. He listened attentively and told me something that stuck with me. "Isabel, respect isn't begged for. It's earned. And if someone decides not to give it to you, you decide not to give it to them either." I also contacted Mr. Harrison, the lawyer who had helped me when I bought the house. I explained the situation with the documents I had found, and he confirmed something terrible. The power of attorney Melissa had made me sign was very broad. It gave her almost total control over my assets if she could prove I was incapacitated. "Mrs. Chen," he told me in a serious voice, "this is more common than you can imagine. Many children manipulate their parents to take their properties, but you are fully within your rights to revoke that power at any time. Your mind is perfectly clear." I left the lawyer's office that afternoon with a folder full of new documents and a plan that would shake the foundations of the life Melissa thought she controlled. On Friday night, Melissa came home with news that chilled my blood. "Mom, I have something important to tell you," she announced as she poured herself a glass of water in the kitchen. "I've been thinking a lot about your well-being, and I think it's time we consider other options for your care." I sat down in a kitchen chair, pretending I didn't know where the conversation was going. "What kind of options, dear?" I asked in the most innocent voice I could muster. "Well, you know, specialized places where they can take better care of you. You need to socialize with people your own age, do activities, have medical supervision. You're so lonely here when I'm at work." The irony was cruel. She never worked more than 4 hours a day and spent the rest of her time at shopping malls or with her friends. "Melissa," I said very calmly, "this is my house. I bought it with my work. I maintained it with my effort, and I have been happy here for 20 years. She sighed as if speaking to a stubborn child. "Mom, I understand you're attached, but you can't live alone anymore. What if you fall and no one is around? What if you forget to turn off the gas? I can't be at peace knowing you're at risk. Her words sounded concerned, but I knew my daughter. I knew when she was acting and when she was genuine. Besides, she continued, selling the house would give us good money to ensure your care in a really good place. I would manage everything, obviously. That night, after putting Nathan to bed, I stayed awake in my room, reviewing every detail of the last few months. I remembered all the times Melissa had casually mentioned stories of elderly people having accidents at home. The times she had commented on how expensive it was to maintain such a large house. How she had started talking about retirement homes as if they were luxury resorts. It had all been a slow, calculated campaign to convince me that I needed specialized care when the reality was that she needed my money and my house. On Monday, very early, while Melissa was sleeping soundly after coming home drunk the night before, I left the house with my most elegant purse and all my important documents. My first stop was the bank where I requested to speak with the general manager. I explained the whole situation, showed him the unauthorized withdrawals, and he immediately blocked Melissa's access to all my accounts. "Mrs. Chen," he said respectfully, "you have every right to protect your assets. Your daughter was not authorized to withdraw money from the minor's account." I signed new papers, changed all my passwords, and felt as if I had regained my financial freedom after months of being robbed in my own home. My second stop was with Mr. Harrison. There I signed the revocation of the power of attorney Melissa had made me sign, and we did something even more important, a new will. In the previous one, Melissa inherited everything. In the new one, everything was left in a trust for Nathan, which could only be managed by an independent trustee until he turned 25. Melissa would not inherit a single penny from me. "Mr. Harrison, I want to ensure my grandson has a dignified future without depending on a mother who doesn't know how to value or care for what she has." I left that office feeling lighter than I had in years. But my plan was just beginning. That afternoon, while Melissa thought I was taking my usual nap, I contacted a very discreet real estate agency. The appraisal of my house was a surprise even to me. It was worth $400,000, much more than Melissa imagined. The area had indeed appreciated in value, just as she had told her friend. But what she didn't know was that I was perfectly aware of the value of my assets. The agent explained that he had interested buyers, that they could close the sale in less than 3 weeks. "Are you sure, Mrs. Chen? This is a very big decision," he asked with genuine concern. "Mr. Harrison," I replied. "I am 67 years old and I know exactly what I'm doing. My daughter wants my house, but she doesn't want me. Well, she's about to learn the difference." During those days, I observed Melissa with completely new eyes. I saw how she spoke with contempt about older women on television. Oh, these dramatic old ladies, always exaggerating everything. I saw how she treated Nathan when she was in a bad mood. "I already told you no, Nathan. Not everything revolves around you." I saw how she spent my money on unnecessary things. Expensive clothes, restaurant meals, beauty treatments, while haggling with me over every dollar when I needed to buy my medications. "Mom, don't you think $20 for pills is a lot? You should look for cheaper generics," she would say, while carrying bags from Nordstrom worth hundreds of dollars. On Wednesday of that week, Melissa came home with a surprise for me. She had made an appointment with a geriatrician for a general checkup. "Mom, at your age, it's important to have complete studies done. This doctor is very good, a specialist in older people." I agreed without question. But when we arrived at the office, I realized it was not a normal medical appointment. Melissa stayed in the consultation room the whole time, answering questions about me, my behavior at home, my frequent forgetfulness, my mood swings. The doctor asked me very strange questions. If I knew what day it was, if I remembered the names of past presidents, if I had trouble managing money. I answered everything perfectly with more clarity than I had had in years. But I noticed how Melissa tried to intervene. "Doctor, it's just that at home she sometimes gets confused with dates. Lately, she's been very forgetful with her keys." When we left the office, Melissa was quiet, clearly annoyed that the doctor hadn't found any signs of cognitive decline. In the car, on the way back home, she said something that confirmed all my suspicions. "Mom, I think you got nervous with the doctor. You didn't answer as you normally would. It was incredible. She was trying to convince me that I was unwell when I had just proven the opposite. Melissa, I said very calmly, my faculties are perfect. In fact, I've never felt more lucid. She didn't reply, but I saw her grip the steering wheel tighter. That night was the last time I had dinner with my family in my house. Melissa had made sandwiches, something quick, because she had an important date, and Nathan was excitedly talking about a science project he was doing at school. Grandma, I'm making a volcano that's going to erupt for real. Will you help me finish it? Of course, my sweetie, I replied, and I saw Melissa roll her eyes. Nathan, your grandma is too old to be bending over doing school projects. You'd better ask your Aunt Andrea for help. But I want Grandma to help me, the boy insisted. I already told you no, Melissa yelled, and Nathan immediately fell silent, tears welling in his eyes. In that moment, something inside me broke for good. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't rage. It was absolute clarity. Melissa was not only stealing my money and planning to take my house. She was also damaging the relationship between Nathan and me. She was turning my grandson into a witness of disrespect toward his grandmother, teaching him that the elderly have no value, that their opinions don't matter, that their feelings can be ignored. That night, after helping Nathan with his volcano while Melissa was on her date, I made the most important decision of my life. I stayed up until 3 o'clock in the morning writing letters. One for Nathan explaining that everything I was about to do was out of love for him. Another for Melissa where I explained exactly everything I had discovered and everything that was going to happen. And a third letter to myself, something I had never done before but felt was necessary. In that letter, I wrote down all the reasons I deserved respect. All the times I had shown my love, all the sacrifices I had made, and all the times I had been patient when I should have set boundaries. I wrote until my fingers ached, until I ran out of tears, until I felt I had emptied my chest of all the pain accumulated over the years. At 5 o'clock in the morning, while it was still dark, I packed a small suitcase with my most important things, the clothes I really loved, the jewelry I had inherited from my mother, the photos of Nathan, and a small cross that had been with me my whole life. I left the letters on the kitchen table along with the house keys and a folder with all the sale documents, a sale that would become effective in exactly 15 days. I also left Nathan's savings passbook with a note explaining that all that money was for him and that I had protected it from the theft his mother was committing. When I closed the door to my house for the last time, I didn't feel nostalgia. I felt liberation. I had been treated like old furniture in my own home for months, like an obstacle to be endured until they found a way to get rid of me. Melissa wanted me to disappear from her life so she could keep everything I had built. Well, I was going to give her exactly what she asked for, my absence, but without the prize she expected. The taxi taking me to the bus terminal was driving me away, not just from that house, but from years of silent humiliation. When the driver asked if I was okay because he had seen me crying, I smiled and told him, "I'm perfect, young man. For the first time in a long time, I'm perfect." On the bus to Madison, as I watched the landscape pass by the window, I thought about what Melissa would find when she woke up. The letters explaining exactly what she had done wrong. The sale documents showing her she no longer had a home to live in rent-free. Nathan's bank statement revealing her thefts, and above all, my total absence. There would be no yelling, no pleading, no televised drama, just the absolute silence of a woman who had finally decided her dignity was worth more than keeping together a family that had already broken from the inside. Melissa had spent years telling me I was a burden, that I was in the way, that I should leave. Well, she had gotten her wish, but she never imagined that when I left, I would take with me everything that truly mattered. I arrived in Madison at 11 o'clock in the morning, and my cousin William was waiting for me at the station with a smile I hadn't seen in years. "Isabel, you look different," he said as he carried my suitcase. "You look free." He was right. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying the weight of walking on eggshells in my own house. His wife, Susan, greeted me with a long, sincere hug. "This house is your house for as long as you need," she said with a warmth I had forgotten existed among family. They gave me the guest room, small but cozy, with a window overlooking a garden full of lilacs. It was the first time in years I would wake up without the sound of screaming or complaints in the background. During my first few days in Madison, my phone rang non-stop. Melissa called every hour, first with a desperate voice, then furious, then pleading. I listened to the voicemail she left, but I didn't answer a single call. "Mom, this is crazy. You can't sell the house without consulting me," she screamed in one message. In another, she changed her tone. "Mommy, forgive me if I said something that upset you, but you can't punish Nathan like this. He needs you." And in the most desperate one, "Isabel, this is illegal. I'm going to sue to stop the sale." Each message confirmed that I had made the right decision. There wasn't a single real apology, not a single acknowledgement of all the harm she had done, just panic at losing what she considered hers. On the third day, I received a call from Mr. Harrison. "Mrs. Chen, your daughter showed up at my office with a lawyer. They're trying to contest the sale, claiming you are not in your right mind." I laughed for the first time in weeks. "Mr. Harrison, I hope you showed them all the medical and psychological documents you asked me to get." "Of course, The geriatrician's certificate confirms you are in perfect mental condition. Your daughter has no legal recourse. The sale is proceeding as scheduled." I hung up the phone feeling a satisfaction I had never experienced before. Melissa had completely underestimated her poor old mother. One afternoon, while helping Susan prepare dinner, a call came that broke my heart. It was Nathan crying. "Grandma, why did you leave? Mommy says you're mad at me." His trembling little voice made my own hands shake. "My love, I could never be mad at you. I love you more than anything in the world. Then why don't you come home? I miss you helping me with my homework." Susan noticed I was crying and put a hand on my shoulder. "Nathan, sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions to protect the people they love. I'm protecting you, even if you don't understand it right now. But when are you coming back?" The question tore me apart. "I don't know, my sweetie, but I want you to know that you will always be the most important thing to me." After hanging up, I locked myself in my room and cried like I hadn't cried in years. It wasn't a cry of sadness, but of rage. Rage because Melissa was using Nathan to manipulate me emotionally. Rage because my grandson was suffering the consequences of his mother's selfish decisions. Rage because after everything I had done for her, Melissa didn't understand that I had made this decision precisely to protect Nathan from growing up in an environment where elders are not respected. Susan knocked gently on the door. "Isabel, can I come in?" She entered with a cup of chamomile tea and sat beside me on the bed. "My sister Gloria went through the same thing with her son. It hurts now, but you did the right thing." That night, lying in my new bed, I started to remember how I had gotten into this situation. I thought of Robert, my ex-husband, who had left when Melissa was 6 because he wasn't ready for the responsibility of a family. I remembered the nights I sewed until 3 o'clock in the morning to pay the rent for our tiny apartment in the city. Melissa was a beautiful child with big eyes and a mischievous smile who always asked when her daddy was coming back. "Soon, my love," I would lie because I didn't have the heart to explain that he had chosen his freedom over us. For years, she was the only good thing in my life. The reason I worked 18 hours a day, the motivation to keep going when everything seemed impossible. I remembered when Melissa turned 16 and I had saved for 2 years to throw her a party that lived up to her dreams. I rented a small hall, bought her a pink dress that made her look like a princess, and hired a band I knew from work. That night, watching her dance with my brother William, who had played the role of a father, I felt that all the sacrifices had been worth it. "Mommy, thank you for doing this for me," she had told me that night, hugging me tightly. "You're the best mom in the world." Those words had been like a balm to my tired soul. At what point had that grateful child turned into the woman who spat in my face? The next day, William suggested we go for a walk downtown. It had been years since I had strolled without rushing, without having to run back home to prepare food or wash Melissa's clothes. We walked through the cobblestone streets, saw the old churches, and sat on a bench in the main square, eating ice cream like 2 tourists. "Isabel," William said as we watched the families walk by, "when was the last time you did something just because it made you happy?" I thought about it and realized something terrible. I couldn't remember the last time I had done something for myself. Everything in my life had revolved around Melissa's needs and then Nathan's. You know what, I told William. I want to call my old friend Janet. We worked together at the sewing shop 20 years ago. Janet had married a businessman and moved to Austin, but we had kept in sporadic contact. When I called her and told her my situation, her reaction surprised me. Isabel, it's about time you woke up. I always knew that girl was taking advantage of you. The times I called your house and she answered with a sour face as if I were a nuisance. Janet invited me to visit her in Austin. Come for a few days, honey. I have a clothing business and you could help me out. It'll do you good to be active and meet new people. That conversation made me reflect on how many opportunities one had turned down over the last few years for the sake of not leaving Melissa alone. How many invitations from friends, how many trips, how many moments of joy I had sacrificed for a daughter who in the end only saw me as her personal servant. I remembered when my friend Teresa had invited me on a Caribbean cruise to celebrate her 60th birthday. Oh, Teresa, I can't leave Melissa with the boy. She works so hard, I had said. But the reality was that Melissa worked 4 hours a day and spent the rest of her time at the gym or with her friends. I had turned down a dream trip to take care of a grown woman who was perfectly capable of taking care of herself. On Saturday morning, while we were having breakfast on William's patio, an unexpected call came. It was Andrea, Melissa's sister, her voice nervous. Aunt Isabel, where are you? Melissa is going crazy looking for you. I'm perfectly fine, Andrea. And tell your sister to stop the drama. But Aunt Isabel, Nathan is so sad. He keeps asking for you. Andrea, I said in a firm voice. Nathan is sad because his mother is emotionally manipulating him. Instead of explaining the truth, she's using his pain to make me feel guilty. Andrea was quiet for a moment. Aunt Isabel, the truth is Melissa is really desperate. I don't think she ever imagined you would do this. Exactly, I replied. She never thought I was capable of defending myself. That was her mistake. After hanging up, William asked me something that made me reflect deeply. Isabel, do you think Melissa really didn't know she was hurting you, or did she just not care? The question made me uncomfortable because it touched on something I had avoided thinking about. For years, I had convinced myself that Melissa acted this way because she was stressed, because the divorce had affected her, because raising Nathan alone was difficult. But sitting there on that quiet morning, I remembered dozens of moments when I had seen in her eyes that she knew exactly what she was doing. Like when she would yell at me in front of her friends and then wink at me as if it were a game, or when she would ask for money borrowed, knowing perfectly well she would never pay it back. William, I said finally, I think Melissa knew she was hurting me and I think she liked having that power over me. It was the first time I had admitted it out loud and saying it freed me from a huge burden. For years, I had made myself believe that I was too sensitive, that I was exaggerating, that I was misinterpreting her actions. But the truth was simpler and more painful. My daughter had enjoyed humiliating me because it made her feel superior, adult, powerful. And you know what's the saddest part? I added. It's that I allowed it because I was afraid of losing her love. But I've realized that that love never really existed. That afternoon, I received a call from Mr. Harrison with news that made my heart sing. Mrs. Chen, the sale was completed successfully. The money has been deposited into your new account. What do you want me to do with the belongings left in the house? Mr. Harrison, everything left there belongs to Melissa and Nathan. I took the only things that truly mattered to me. And the furniture. There is furniture that is clearly theirs. Let them have it. Consider it my final parting gift. When I hung up, William saw me smile. Good news. The best. I officially no longer have a house in Chicago, and I've never felt freer. That night, Susan made me my favorite dinner, lasagna with garlic bread. While we ate, she told me about a friend who had gone through a similar situation. Her name was Gloria. She had 3 children who treated her very badly. One day she disappeared. She went to live with a sister in Florida. The children looked for her like crazy. But when they found her, she had already rebuilt her life. She had a job she liked, new friends, even a suitor. She told them, "You told me I was a nuisance. Now see how it feels to live without this nuisance." The story made me laugh. And what happened? At first, the children were furious. But after a few months, they realized how much they depended on her. They begged her for forgiveness on their knees. But she had already decided her new life was better. On Sunday morning, while I was watering the plants in Susan's garden, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I decided to answer. "Mrs. Isabel." It was a young woman's voice I didn't recognize. "Yes. Who's speaking?" "I'm Miss Parker, Nathan's teacher. I'm sorry to take the liberty of calling you, but I'm very worried about the boy." My blood ran cold. "What's wrong with my grandson?" "He's very sad, He keeps asking about you. He says you left because he behaved badly. His mother told us you are sick, but Nathan insists you are fine and that you left because you're mad at him." Melissa's manipulation knew no bounds. "Miss Parker," I said in a controlled voice. "My grandson did nothing wrong. I had to get away from a very difficult situation at home, but that has nothing to do with Nathan. Would it be possible for you to write him a letter? The boy needs to know it's not his fault." That same afternoon, I sat down to write the most difficult letter of my life. I explained to Nathan in words he could understand that sometimes adults have to make tough decisions, that I loved him more than anything in the world, but that I needed to be in a place where I was treated with respect. I told him that when he was older, he would understand better. But in the meantime, I wanted him to know that he had done nothing wrong. The next day, Mr. Harrison called me with information I wasn't expecting. "Mrs. Chen, Melissa is trying to locate you. She hired a private investigator." The news made me nervous. Can she do that legally? "She can try, but you are an adult in full command of your faculties. You are not obligated to say where you live or to receive unwanted visitors." That afternoon, I spoke with William about my fears. "Isabel, if you want to be more at ease, you can stay here as long as you need. This city is big, and besides, no one is looking for you for committing a crime. You simply decided to leave your house." During those weeks in Madison, I began to rediscover who I was before I became the long-suffering mother who put up with everything. I started getting up when I wanted to, not because someone needed me. I had quiet breakfasts, reading the entire newspaper, not just the headlines while rushing to make lunch. In the afternoons, I walked around the city, visited museums, sat in cafes with a cappuccino, and watched people go by. It was incredible to realize how much I had stopped doing to please a daughter who never appreciated my sacrifices. One morning while I was sunbathing in the garden, Susan sat next to me with a serious expression. "Isabel, I have to tell you something. A young woman came by yesterday asking for you. She said she was a market researcher, but I suspect she was the person Melissa hired to find you." My heart raced. "What did you tell her?" "That I had never heard of any Isabel Chen, but I think it's time for you to make a decision. Are you going to stay in hiding forever, or are you going to face the situation?" Susan was right. I had been running for weeks, but I couldn't run forever. That night, I made an important decision. I called Janet in Austin and accepted her invitation. "Janet, is your job offer still open?" "Of course. When can you come?" "Next week." Austin was farther from Chicago. And besides, I would have a job that would keep me active and give me financial independence. I wasn't going to live off the money from the house sale forever. I wanted to save that to ensure Nathan's future when he was older. I wanted to prove to myself and incidentally to Melissa that at 67, I was still capable of starting over. Before leaving Madison, I decided to do something I had been putting off. Call Melissa directly. I dialed her number at 7 in the morning, knowing I would catch her at home. Mom, is that you?" Her voice sounded desperate. "Yes, Melissa, it's me." "Thank God. Where are you? Are you okay? I'm coming to get you right now." "Melissa, I'm not going to tell you where I am, and I'm not coming back." "But Mom, this is absurd. We're family." "Melissa, for years, You treated me as if I were your employee. You stole money from me. You planned to put me in a nursing home. You humiliated me in front of my grandson. That is not being family. Mom, I never. Melissa, don't interrupt me. I'm going to talk and you're going to listen for the first time in years. My voice came out firm without a tremor. I sold the house because I discovered you were stealing money from Nathan's account. I changed my will because I found out you were planning to take my assets. I left because you spat in my face and told me I was a filthy old woman. Do you need me to remind you of anything else? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mom, I was stressed. The divorce, the money problems. Melissa, stress does not justify cruelty, and you had no money problems. You were living rent-free in my house. You were spending my money, and you were working no more than part-time. What about Nathan? Are you going to punish your grandson for my mistakes? It was the question I knew would come, the usual emotional manipulation. Melissa, Nathan is not being punished. He is learning that actions have consequences. That when you hurt the people who love you, you can lose them forever. Mom, please come back. I promise everything will be different. Melissa, for years, you promised me you would change. You promised you would get a stable job, that you would treat me better, that you would be more independent. But the only promises you kept were your threats. You told me I was a nuisance and that I should leave. Well, here is what you asked for. When I hung up the phone, my hands were shaking, but not from fear, but from liberation. It was the first time in years I had spoken to Melissa without apologizing for existing, without begging for her love, without accepting her mistreatment. Susan, who had heard the conversation from the kitchen, came over and hugged me. Isabel, I am so proud of you. You spoke to her like a woman who respects herself. That afternoon, I packed my things to go to Austin. I didn't know what awaited me there, but for the first time in a long time, that uncertainty excited me instead of scaring me. The day before I left, I received a call I wasn't expecting. It was Andrea, but this time she sounded different. Aunt Isabel, I need to tell you something important. Tell me, Andrea. Melissa told me what really happened about Nathan's money, the power of attorney, the spitting incident. Aunt Isabel, I didn't know things were that bad. Andrea, your sister has been treating me like this for years. It didn't start last week. I know, Aunt Isabel, and I'm ashamed because I also thought you were exaggerating when you complained. But now I see it was all true. And you're calling to tell me what, Andrea? To ask for your forgiveness and to tell you that I understand why you left. In your place, I would have done the same, but I probably wouldn't have had your courage. That conversation made me reflect on something important. For years, the whole family had known how Melissa treated me, but no one had done anything to defend me. They had all preferred to believe I was exaggerating, that I was too sensitive, that I misinterpreted things. It was easier to blame the victim than to confront the abuser. Andrea, I told her before hanging up, I hope this experience helps you treat your own mother better because children who see their grandmothers being mistreated learn that it's normal to mistreat their mothers. You're right, Aunt Isabel. I'm going to think a lot about this. The morning of my departure for Austin, as I waited for the bus at the terminal, I looked back one last time. Not at the terminal, but at the entire stage of my life that I was closing. I had been the perfect mother, the perfect grandmother, the woman who always put everyone before herself. And I had ended up being spat in the face by the person I had loved most in the world. But that humiliation had awakened me from a long and painful dream. It had given me back to myself. When I got on the bus to Austin, I wasn't just carrying a suitcase with clothes. I was carrying the wisdom of a woman who had finally learned that self-love is not selfishness, but survival. I arrived in Austin on a Tuesday afternoon, and Janet was waiting for me at the bus station with a smile I hadn't seen in years. Isabel, you look different. More, how can I put it? More yourself. She was right. During the 5-hour journey from Madison, I had felt every mile take me not just further from Melissa, but from the submissive woman I had become. Janet took me directly to her house in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets that reminded me of the America of my youth, when families knew their neighbors and problems were solved with conversations, not screams. The room Janet had prepared for me was small but cozy, with a window that overlooked a garden full of jacaranda trees. "Isabel, this house is your house for as long as you want. And tomorrow I'll show you the business. You'll see. Working again will do you a world of good." That night, as I unpacked my suitcase for the third time in a month, I realized something important. Each time I moved, I carried fewer material things, but more self-confidence. I no longer needed all those objects that for years I thought defined my identity. My true identity was being reborn from within. Janet's boutique was called Timeless Elegance and specialized in clothing for women over 50. "Isabel, there's a huge market of women who want to dress well but can't find clothes appropriate for their age and body," she explained as she showed me the shop. "Here, we don't sell clothes for young girls or grandma's muumuus. We sell real elegance." I was thrilled to see the well-cut dresses, the quality blouses, the classy accessories. And what would I do exactly? Attend to clients, help them choose outfits, and above all, use your life experience to advise them. Women our age don't just buy clothes, they buy confidence. My first day at work was a revelation. At 10 o'clock in the morning, a woman of about 60 came in, elegant, but with a sad expression. "I'm looking for something for a wedding," she said without much enthusiasm. "Is it a happy occasion?" I asked as I walked her over to the dresses. "It's my eldest son's wedding, but my daughter-in-law didn't want me to come. They invited me in the end, but I feel like I'm crashing." The story hit my heart because I recognized the pain in her eyes. What's your name?" "Beverly." "Beverly, you are not crashing anywhere. You are the mother of the groom. We are going to find you an outfit that makes you feel like the queen you are." We spent an hour choosing the perfect navy blue dress with an elegant cut that enhanced her figure without being over the top. When she tried it on and looked in the mirror, her face changed completely. "Is that really me?" "That's the Beverly who has always been there," I said sincerely. "She just needed the right outfit to shine." When she left with her new dress and a radiant smile, Janet told me, "Isabel, you have a gift. You don't just sell clothes. You give back self-esteem." That afternoon, I realized that helping other women feel valuable was helping me heal my own wounds. During my first few weeks in Austin, I established a routine that filled me with energy. I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, not because someone forced me to, but because I wanted to start the day. I had a quiet breakfast while reading the news. I walked 15 minutes to the boutique. I worked until 6 o'clock in the evening. And at night, I read or watched movies I liked. On weekends, I explored the city. I visited museums, walked through the historic districts, went to church at the cathedral. It was incredible to rediscover that I had my own tastes, my own opinions, a personality that had been dormant for years. One Saturday morning while having breakfast at a cafe downtown, my phone rang. It was a Chicago number I didn't recognize. I hesitated to answer, but something told me to. "Mrs. Isabel Chen." "Yes. Who's speaking?" "I'm Mr. Wilson from Nathan's school. I'm sorry to bother you, but we need to talk to you about your grandson." My blood ran cold. Did something happen to Nathan? No. Physically, he's fine, but we are very worried about his emotional state. Since you left, the boy has been very depressed. He doesn't participate in class, cries frequently, and yesterday he told us something that alarmed us. "What did he say?" I asked, feeling my heart race. "He told us that it's his fault you left, and that if he had never been born, you would still be happy with his mom." The words shattered my soul. "Mr. Wilson, that's not true. Nathan is not to blame for anything." "We know that, but the boy is very confused. His mother tells him one thing. You're not here to explain another. Would it be possible for you to come and talk to him? Not necessarily to stay, just to explain the situation." The request put me in a terrible dilemma. I wanted to see Nathan more than anything in the world, but I knew Melissa would use that visit to manipulate me emotionally. That afternoon, I called Mr. Harrison for advice. "Mr. Harrison, what happens if I go to see Nathan and Melissa tries to prevent me from leaving again?" "Mrs. Chen, you are a free person. No one can force you to stay anywhere. Besides, if you want, I can accompany you on the visit to ensure everything is legal and appropriate. The idea of having a lawyer present reassured me. And if Melissa tries to prevent me from seeing Nathan? You are the boy's grandmother. You have a legal right to see him, especially if the school considers it necessary for the minor's well-being. For several days, I mulled over the decision. Janet advised me to go. Isabel, that boy needs you, and you need to make sure he's okay. But Susan, when I called her in Madison, gave me another perspective. Isabel, be careful. Melissa might be using the boy to get you to come back. Don't you think it's very convenient that the school is calling you just now? Both were right. But in the end, my love for Nathan outweighed my fears. I decided to return to Chicago for a day just to see my grandson and explain the truth. On Friday morning, I took a flight from Austin to Chicago. It was the first time I had flown alone in years. And that small freedom made me feel powerful. During the flight, I mentally prepared what I would say to Nathan and, if necessary, to Melissa. I wasn't going to justify myself. I wasn't going to apologize for defending myself. I wasn't going to let them emotionally blackmail me. I was going, as the grandmother I am, to reassure a child who was suffering because of the irresponsible adults around him. Mr. Harrison picked me up at the airport and we went directly to the school. "Are you ready, Mrs. Chen?" he asked as we walked toward the entrance. "More ready than I've ever been," I replied with conviction. The principal received us in his office and explained the situation in more detail. Nathan is a very intelligent boy, but he is clearly affected by this family situation. He needs emotional stability to be able to concentrate on his studies. Have you spoken to his mother about this? Yes, but she insists that the problem is that you left without explanation. That's why we need you to speak directly to the boy. When they brought Nathan to the office, my heart shattered. He had lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes, and when he saw me, he burst into tears. "Grandma, you're not mad at me anymore." He ran to me, and I hugged him as if years had passed instead of 2 months. "My love, I have never been mad at you, nor could I ever be. But you left without saying goodbye." Nathan, look into your grandma's eyes. Sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions. I left because I wasn't being treated well at home. But that has nothing to do with you. You are what I love most in the world. So why don't you come back? The question I feared inevitably arrived. "Nathan, have you seen how your mom used to talk to me?" The boy looked down. "Yes." "And how did you feel when you saw that?" "Bad. I was scared when she yelled at you." "Exactly. I can't live in a place where I'm yelled at and disrespected. Not because I'm proud, but because everyone deserves to be treated with love." "But what does that have to do with me?" "Nothing, my sweetie. You have nothing to do with it. That's why I wrote you that letter explaining that this isn't your fault." "Mommy didn't give me any letter." The comment confirmed that Melissa had intercepted my mail. Just one more manipulation. "Nathan," I said, taking his little hands in mine, "I want you to understand something very important. I didn't abandon you. I'm living in another place. But I will always be your grandma. You can always count on me. But I can't go back to living where I'm treated badly. What if I promise Mommy will change?" The innocence of his words broke my heart. "My love, adults have to change because they want to, not because others ask them to. And the change has to be real, not just promises." I gave him a long hug and promised we would see each other soon. "Can I call you on the phone?" "Of course. I'll give you my new number." When we left the school, Mr. Harrison suggested we go for lunch before my flight back. "How do you feel after seeing Nathan?" Sad for him, but confirmed in my decision. That child is being used as a pawn in his mother's manipulation game. And if Melissa shows up at the airport, let her show up. I'm not afraid of her anymore. During lunch, my phone rang constantly. Melissa had found out I was in the city and was calling me desperately. I didn't answer any calls, but I did read the text messages she sent me. "Mom, I know you're here. The school called me. Please come to the house. We need to talk. You can't leave again without seeing me. Mom, please give your family a chance. Asterisk. Each message confirmed that Melissa still didn't understand that it wasn't about giving chances, but about basic respect. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Mr. Harrison took me to the airport. As we waited in the boarding lounge, I felt proud of myself. I had come to Chicago for Nathan. I had fulfilled my purpose, and I was leaving without having let myself be emotionally manipulated. But Melissa had other plans. When they announced my flight, and I walked toward the gate, I saw her. She was standing by the entrance with Nathan by the hand, waiting for me. My grandson ran to me as soon as he saw me. Grandma, don't go again. Melissa approached with tears in her eyes. A perfect performance for the occasion. Mom, please. Nathan needs his grandmother. I need my mother. Melissa, I said in a calm but firm voice. I'm not going to make a scene here. This is an airport. There are other people. Then come to the house. Let's talk like a family. Melissa, we have nothing to talk about until you understand what you did wrong. I already said I'm sorry. What more do you want? I don't want empty apologies. I want you to actually change. And how am I supposed to change if you don't give me a chance? The usual circular logic. Melissa, for 3 years, I gave you chances every single day. Every time you yelled at me and then acted as if nothing had happened. Every time you disrespected me and I kept quiet. Every time you asked for money, borrowed, knowing you wouldn't pay it back, you used up all your chances. Nathan looked at me, not understanding the adult conversation, but clearly distressed by the tension. Look what you're doing to Nathan, Melissa said, playing her last card. Look what you've done to him for years, I replied. Look how you've put him in the middle of our problems instead of protecting him. Look how you're using him right now to manipulate me. Melissa was speechless for a moment. Nathan pulled on my blouse. Grandma, can I go with you? His innocent question broke my heart, but it also confirmed what I already knew. That child was looking for emotional stability that his mother couldn't give him. My love, I said, kneeling to his level. You have to stay with your mom. It's your place. But I want you to know that whenever you need me, I will be here for you. You promise? I promise. I gave him a tight hug and whispered in his ear. Be good. Study hard. And remember that your grandma loves you more than anything in the world. When I stood up, Melissa's face was red with contained rage. This isn't going to end like this, Isabel. You're right, I said with a serene smile. It's not going to end like this. It's going to get worse if you continue to not understand the lesson. During the flight back to Austin, I reflected on what had happened. Seeing Nathan had confirmed that my decision was right. That child needed to know that there were adults in his life who respected themselves, who didn't accept mistreatment, who made difficult decisions when necessary. If I went back and became the submissive grandmother I used to be, I would be teaching him that love means enduring humiliation. It was better to teach him by my example that self-love is just as important as love for others. When I arrived at Janet's house that night, she was waiting for me with a hot dinner and a sympathetic smile. How did it go? Difficult, but necessary, I replied. I saw Nathan. I confirmed that it's not his fault. And I confirmed that Melissa still doesn't understand anything. And how do you feel? Free. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, knowing that I had done the right thing for both Nathan and myself. The next day, Saturday, I decided to do something I had been putting off. Call my other old friends to tell them about my new life. The first was Gloria, who lived in Denver. When I told her the whole story, her reaction surprised me. Isabel, how brave. I've been putting up with my son Michael's rudeness for years because I'm afraid of being alone. Gloria, being alone is not the worst thing that can happen to you. The worst thing is to be surrounded by people who don't value you. I told her about my job at the boutique, about my new independence, about the peace I had found. You know what, Isabel? You've given me a lot to think about. On Monday morning at the boutique, a new client came in who deeply affected me. She was a woman of about 70, elegant, but with a sad expression. "I'm looking for clothes to go live in a retirement home," she told me in a resigned voice. "My son says I can't live alone anymore." Something in her story reminded me of myself a few months ago. Do you want to go to that home? Of course not. But my son says it's for the best. And what do you think? That my son wants to take my house and needs me out of the way. We spent the whole morning talking. Her name was Evelyn and her story was very similar to mine. Manipulative son, pressure to accept decisions others made for her, emotional blackmail disguised as concern. "Evelyn," I said finally, "are you in full command of your mental faculties?" "Of course." "Do you have your own financial resources?" "Yes, my pension and my savings." "Then why do you have to do what your son wants instead of what you want?" The question left her thinking. In the end, she didn't buy clothes for the home, but a beautiful dress to think things over. That afternoon, Janet made me a proposal that would change my life forever. "Isabel, I've been thinking. Would you like to be my partner in the business?" The question took me by surprise. "Your partner?" "Yes. I'm thinking of expanding the business, opening a second branch, maybe offering image consulting for mature women. Would you be interested?" The proposal thrilled me deeply. It was not only a financial opportunity, but also a recognition that I had value, talent, abilities that others appreciated. "Janet, are you sure? I've never been a partner in anything." "Isabel, you have something that money can't buy. Life experience, genuine empathy, and the ability to make other women feel valuable. That's exactly what our business needs." That night, I lay awake thinking about the proposal. At 67, I was being given the opportunity to be a businesswoman, to be financially independent, to build something of my own. It was something I had never dreamed of because I had always been busy living for others. On Wednesday afternoon, while organizing the boutique's inventory, my phone rang. It was Nathan calling from the school phone. "Grandma, is it true you're never going to see me again?" "Who told you that, my love?" "Mommy," she says, "because you don't want to come back to the house, you don't want anything to do with me anymore." Melissa's manipulation knew no bounds. "Nathan, that's a lie. I will always want to see you. In fact, I was thinking that maybe you could come visit me on vacation." "Really?" "Really. But you'd have to ask your mom for permission." "I'm going to ask her right now." That same afternoon, Melissa called me furious. "How dare you put strange ideas in Nathan's head?" "What strange ideas?" "I told him he could visit me." "I'm not crazy enough to let you take my son." "Melissa, I'm not going to take him. It would just be a vacation visit like any child visiting their grandparents." "You're not like any other grandmother. You abandoned your family." "Melissa, I didn't abandon anyone. I defended myself from an abusive daughter." "Isabel, stop playing the victim." "Melissa, stop playing the innocent. We've known each other for 34 years. You know exactly why I left." The conversation ended with Melissa hanging up on me. But that night, Nathan called me again. "Grandma, Mommy says you're dangerous. Do you think you are?" "My love, I think I'm not dangerous. I think I'm the best grandma in the world. Do you trust me?" "Yes." "Then don't worry about what others say. You know who I really am." That conversation confirmed something important. Nathan was developing his own judgment, his own ability to distinguish between truth and manipulation. It was a skill that would serve him his whole life. On Friday of that week, I gave Janet my answer. I accepted being her partner. We signed the papers before a notary and I officially became a co-owner of Timeless Elegance. For the first time in my life, my name was on business documents as entrepreneur, not as a beneficiary or dependent of someone else. That night, we celebrated with a special dinner and Janet gave me business cards with my name. Isabel Chen, image consultant and founding partner. When I saw my name printed that way, my eyes filled with tears of joy. In the days that followed, I worked with more enthusiasm than ever. Every client I attended was an opportunity to show that mature women have a lot to offer the world. One afternoon, a woman came in who told me her family was pressuring her to sell her house and go live with a daughter who didn't want her. Do you want to sell your house? I asked her. Not at all. It's the house where I raised my children, where I lived with my husband. But they say it's for the best. Who decides what's best for you? The question made her reflect deeply. At the end of that week, I received a call that filled me with pride. It was Evelyn, the woman who had come looking for clothes for the retirement home. Isabel, I have to tell you, I told my son I'm not going to any home, that my house is mine, and I'm staying in it. He was furious, but he can't force me. And how do you feel? Free. For the first time in months, I feel free. And it's all thanks to our conversation. When I hung up, I realized that my personal experience had become a tool to help other women. My pain had found a purpose. That night, while having dinner with Janet, I reflected on everything that had changed in my life in such a short time. 3 months ago, I was a humiliated, robbed, despised woman in my own home. Now, I was a successful entrepreneur with a new life, new friends, new purposes. But above all, I was a woman who respected herself. Janet, I told her, I think I found my true calling, helping women like me discover their worth. Isabel, she replied, I think you're right, and I think this is just the beginning. 3 months after becoming a partner in Timeless Elegance, I received a call that changed everything. It was Mr. Harrison with news I wasn't expecting. Mrs. Chen, Melissa has just filed a lawsuit trying to nullify the sale of the house. My heart raced. Can she do that? She's alleging that you were under the influence of third parties when you made the decision, but she has no legal basis. However, there's something more important I need to tell you. Melissa lost her job 2 weeks ago and is in a very complicated financial situation. Apparently, the lawsuit is an act of desperation. The information surprised me, but it didn't cause the sadness I would have expected. It caused a strange mix of compassion and confirmation that I had made the right decision. That afternoon, while working with a new client, my phone rang insistently. It was an unknown number, but when I finally answered, I heard a voice that chilled my blood. Mrs. Isabel. Yes. Who's speaking? It's Andrea. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to speak with you urgently. Did something happen to Nathan? I asked, my stomach clenching. No, Aunt Isabel. Well, yes. It's complicated. Could we talk in person? I'm in Austin. The news took me completely by surprise. You're in Austin? Yes. I came specifically to find you. There are things you need to know about Melissa and about Nathan. That same afternoon, we met at a cafe downtown. Andrea arrived with a serious and tired expression. Aunt Isabel, what I'm about to tell you is not going to be easy to hear. Tell me, Andrea, nothing can surprise me anymore. Melissa is completely bankrupt. She lost her job because she was constantly late. She spent all her savings on unnecessary things. And now she's 3 months behind on rent for the apartment where she lives. And Nathan. That's the part that worries me most, Aunt Isabel. Melissa is telling everyone that you abandoned them on a whim, that you became selfish in your old age, that you no longer love your own family. Nathan is very confused because he hears one version at home and another when he talks to you on the phone. Andrea continued with information that broke my heart. Aunt Isabel, last week I went to visit them and found Nathan doing his homework alone while Melissa was on the phone fighting with the landlord. The boy asked me if it was true that you didn't love him anymore because he was a burden. My eyes filled with tears, imagining my grandson thinking such terrible things. What did you tell him? I told him the truth that you love him more than anything in the world. But you had to leave because Melissa treated you badly. Do you know what he answered? That he already knew that. That he always felt bad when he saw how his mom yelled at you, but he didn't know what to do to fix it. Andrea, why are you telling me all this? I asked, although I suspected the answer. Because Melissa asked me to come and convince you to come back. But after seeing the real situation, I think what you need is to know the whole truth to make the best decision. And what is the whole truth? That Melissa hasn't changed at all. Aunt Isabel, she's still blaming everyone but herself. She's still expecting others to solve her problems. And she's using Nathan as emotional blackmail to try to get you to come back. The information confirmed what I already knew, but hearing it from Andrea's lips gave it an external validation I needed. That night, after Andrea left, I lay awake thinking about Nathan. Janet noticed my concern and sat with me in the living room. "Isabel, what are you going to do?" "I don't know, Janet. On one hand, I know I can't go back to living with Melissa. But on the other hand, I can't let Nathan suffer the consequences of his mother's mistakes. What if there's a third option?" She asked with that wisdom that characterized her. "Like what? What if Nathan comes to live with you here in Austin? Far from all that toxic environment?" The idea both excited and terrified me. But would Melissa agree? If she's bankrupt and can't take care of him properly, maybe she won't have another choice. The next day, I called Mr. Harrison to consult him on the legal possibility of that option. "Mrs. Chen, if Melissa is in a precarious economic situation, and you can prove that you have stable conditions to care for the minor, it is possible to request temporary custody, especially if the child's emotional well-being is at risk." But wouldn't Melissa object? She can object, but if she cannot provide a stable environment, and you can, the law favors the best interest of the child. The possibility began to take shape in my mind as a solution that could benefit everyone, especially Nathan. That same afternoon, I received a direct call from Melissa. Her voice sounded different, more broken, less aggressive. "Mom, I need to talk to you." "Tell me, Melissa. I'm in trouble. Serious trouble." For the first time in years, I heard real vulnerability in her voice, not calculated manipulation. "What kind of trouble?" "Financial. They're going to evict me from the apartment. I don't have a job. I don't know what to do with Nathan. And why are you calling me? As I recall, I'm a filthy old woman who's only in the way." "Mom, please. I know I behaved badly with you." "You behaved badly. Melissa, you stole money from me. You planned to take my house. You humiliated me for years. And you spat in my face." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Mom, I didn't know how to apologize." "Melissa, forgiveness is not something you ask for. It's something you earn. What have you done to earn it?" "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. About how I treated you. About how I became a person I don't like." For the first time in years, Melissa sounded sincere, not calculating. "And what conclusions did you draw?" "That I was a terrible daughter. That I took advantage of your kindness. That," her voice broke. "That I lost the best mother in the world because of my selfishness." Tears began to stream down my cheeks. But they weren't tears of joy, but of a deep sadness for all the lost time. "Melissa, do you really understand what you did to me?" "I think so. I made you feel like a nuisance in your own home. I stole your money. I disrespected you in front of your grandson. I treated you as if you were my employee instead of my mother. And why did you do it? Because I felt like a failure. My marriage had ended. I didn't have a stable job. I was living in your house at 34. And instead of trying to get ahead, it was easier to blame you for my problems." It was the first time Melissa took real responsibility for her actions. No excuses, no justifications, no blaming others. "And what do you need from me now?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. "Help. Not for me, but for Nathan. He's not to blame for my mistakes." "What kind of help?" "I don't know. Maybe he could come live with you while I get my life together. I know I have no right to ask you for anything after everything I did, but he needs you." The proposal coming from her surprised me. "You'd be willing to let Nathan live with me if that's what's best for him?" "Yes, you were always a better mother than I have been, and you are definitely a better grandmother than I am a mother." That conversation left me in a very complex emotional state. On one hand, I felt a strange satisfaction seeing that Melissa finally understood the magnitude of her mistakes. On the other hand, it hurt me deeply to see my daughter in that situation, no matter what she had done to me. And above all, I was excited about the possibility of taking care of Nathan in a healthy and stable environment. "Melissa, if we are going to consider that option, I need you to understand a few things. First, This doesn't mean everything is automatically forgiven. Second, if Nathan comes with me, it will be under my rules, not yours. Third, you will need to show real changes, not just promises. I understand all that, Mom, and I accept the conditions. Are you sure? Because Nathan is not an object you can lend and then take back when it's convenient for you. If he comes with me, it will be because it's truly what's best for him, not a temporary solution to your problems. Mom, for the first time in a long time, I'm really thinking about what's best for my son instead of what's most convenient for me. The conversation ended with the agreement that Melissa would talk to Nathan about the possibility and that afterward the three of us would have a conversation to make the final decision. 2 days later, Melissa and Nathan arrived in Austin by bus. When I saw my grandson get off the bus, my heart filled with joy. He had grown in those months, but above all, he looked calmer than the last time I had seen him. Melissa, on the other hand, looked haggard, thinner, with deep, dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. When we hugged, it was different. There was none of the previous tension, no acting, no coldness. It was the hug of a daughter who finally understood she had lost something valuable. Janet welcomed us into her home with incredible warmth. She had prepared the guest room for Melissa and had bought toys for Nathan. During dinner, I observed the dynamic between mother and son. Melissa was more attentive to Nathan, more present, more affectionate than I had seen her in years. "Grandma," Nathan said to me during dinner, "is it true I might come live with you? Would you like that, my love?" "Yes, but what about my mom? I don't want to leave her all alone." My grandson's concern for his mother confirmed that he was a child with a noble heart despite everything he had been through. "Nathan," Melissa told him in a soft voice, "Mommy is going to be fine. I need to fix some things in my life. And in the meantime, you'll be better off with your grandma. But are you going to visit me?" "Of course, my love. And when I fix everything, we can be together again. Do you promise you'll fix everything?" "I promise. But this time, it's going to be a real promise, not like the other times." That night, after putting Nathan to bed, Melissa and I had the most honest conversation of our lives. "Mom, I want you to know that I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. Melissa, forgiveness is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. I know. And I also know that I have to prove with actions that I've really changed. What are your plans?" "First, get a stable job. I already have some interviews scheduled in Chicago. Second, seek psychological help to understand why I became such a bitter person. Third, pay all my debts, including the money I stole from you. And after that, if you let me, I would like to earn the right to be part of this family again. Not like before, when I only took and never gave, but as a daughter who respects and values her mother." That conversation touched me deeply because I saw in Melissa the girl I had raised with so much love. But I also kept my defenses up because I had learned that pretty words don't guarantee consistent actions. "Melissa, I'm very happy to hear you talk like this, but it's going to take time and concrete actions for me to be able to trust you again. I completely understand and I'm not going to pressure you. If it takes me years to regain your trust, I'm going to take those years. And if you never fully regain it," the question was tough but necessary, "then at least I'll have the peace of mind that I tried to fix the damage I did and that Nathan grew up in a healthy environment with you." The following days were emotionally intense. Melissa and Nathan stayed with me for a week in Austin, getting to know my new life, seeing my work at the boutique, adapting to the quiet routine of a house with no screams or tensions. Melissa helped with everything she could without anyone asking her. She washed dishes, made the bed, took Nathan to the park. It was as if she were trying to prove she could be a considerate person. "Mom," she told me one afternoon as we prepared dinner together, "I never realized how much you worked around the house. I thought everything just got done by itself." Nathan, for his part, adapted to Austin, as if he had been born there. He loved my room, was fascinated by Janet's garden, and immediately made friends with the neighbors' grandchildren. One afternoon while playing in the yard, he asked me, "Grandma, does nobody yell here?" "No, my love. Here, all conversations are with respect. I like it. I like it a lot." That night, as I was tucking him in, he told me something that broke my heart. "Grandma, Why did Mommy used to yell at you so much? I don't know, my sweetie. Sometimes adults make very big mistakes, and she's not going to yell at you anymore. Let's hope not, my love. Let's hope not. On the last day of her visit, Melissa made a decision that surprised me. Mom, I've been thinking and I believe Nathan should stay with you permanently. Are you sure? Completely. This week, I've seen him happier than he has been in months. Here he has stability, tranquility, unconditional love. I'm just learning to be a responsible mother. He can't wait for me to finish learning. And what are you going to do? I'm going back to Chicago, get a job, fix my life, go to therapy, and when I've really changed, when I'm a person he can be proud of, then maybe we can talk about other options. That afternoon, we started the legal proceedings for Nathan to stay with me. Melissa signed all the necessary documents without hesitation, without setting conditions, without making a drama. Mom, she told me as she signed the papers. Thank you for saving my son from my mistakes. Melissa, I'm not saving Nathan from you. I'm giving him the opportunity to grow up in a stable environment while you sort yourself out. That's a very important difference. You're right. As always, when she got on the bus back to Chicago, we both cried, but they were different tears. Mine of hope, hers of determination. The first few months with Nathan in Austin were a wonderful period of adjustment. I enrolled my grandson in an excellent school near the boutique where I could pick him up after work. In the afternoons, we did homework together, cooked, watched movies, played in the park. On weekends, we explored the city, visited museums, went to family parties with Janet. It was the family life I had always dreamed of having, but could never fully enjoy when Melissa was little because I worked too much. Melissa kept her word. Every week she called me to tell me about her progress. She got a job as a receptionist at a medical clinic. She started psychological therapy. She moved into a small but decent room. And most importantly, her conversations with me began to change. She no longer called to ask for favors or to complain about her problems. She called to ask me how I was, how Nathan was, to tell me good things about her day. Mom, she said in one of those calls, my psychologist is helping me understand that for years I held resentment against you without reason. I blamed you for my failed marriage, for my financial problems, for everything that went wrong in my life. And what do you think now? That you were the only person who was always there for me, that you gave me everything you could, and that I confused your unconditional love with an obligation to endure my mistreatment. Those words healed wounds I had been carrying for years. They didn't erase the pain of everything that had happened, but they did give me hope that maybe one day we could have a genuine and respectful mother-daughter relationship. 6 months after Nathan moved in with me, Melissa came to visit for his birthday. The woman who got off the bus was unrecognizable. She had gained a healthy amount of weight, had better color in her face, was dressed more carefully, but above all, she had a tranquility in her eyes that I hadn't seen in years. Her reunion with Nathan was beautiful. There was no desperation or guilt, just genuine love between mother and son. Mommy, you look so pretty, Nathan told her when he saw her. It's because I'm so happy to see you, my love, she replied. During that visit, Melissa behaved like the daughter I had always hoped to have. She helped around the house without being asked. She played with Nathan without being glued to her phone. She talked with me about real topics without manipulations or complaints. One night after putting Nathan to bed, we had a conversation that marked a before and after in our relationship. Mom, I want to formally apologize for everything I did to you. Melissa. No, let me finish. For years, I disrespected you. I stole money from you. I humiliated you. I treated you as if you were my employee. I planned to take your house and put you in a nursing home against your will. I spat in your face and said unforgivable things. There is no justification for any of that. And why are you apologizing now? Because I finally understand the harm I did to you. Because therapy helped me see that my behavior was abusive, not just rude or disrespectful. Because I want you to know that I fully recognize my responsibility in everything that happened. And what do you expect to happen now? Nothing. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were. I don't expect you to forget everything that happened. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, that I deeply regret it, and that I'm going to live the rest of my life trying to be a better person." For the first time in years, I hugged my daughter without reservations, without fears, without defenses. It was the hug of a mother who sees her daughter finally become the woman she always knew she could be. That night, lying in my bed, I reflected on the whole journey. A year ago, I was a humiliated, robbed, despised woman in my own home. Now, I was a successful entrepreneur, a happy grandmother, a woman who respected herself. I had lost a house, but I had gained a life. I had lost an abusive daughter, but I had regained a daughter in the process of healing. And above all, I had taught my grandson that love does not mean enduring mistreatment, but valuing yourself enough to walk away from those who hurt us. Sometimes the best lessons are taught with actions, not with words. 2 years later, my life in Austin had become everything I had ever dreamed of, but never dared to imagine. Timeless Elegance now had 3 branches in the city, and our consulting program for older women had become so popular that we had a 2-month waiting list. Every morning I woke up with the excitement of someone with a purpose, not with the fear of someone walking on eggshells. Nathan, who was now 11, was a completely different child from the one who had arrived with me 2 years ago, confident, cheerful, respectful, with excellent grades and many friends. Seeing him flourish in a stable environment confirmed to me every day that I had made the right decisions. One April morning, while I was watering the bougainvillea in the garden Janet and I had planted together, a letter arrived that filled me with pride. It was from the Austin Chamber of Commerce informing me that Timeless Elegance had been selected as Business of the Year for Senior Inclusion. The recognition was not only for sales, but for our program of free workshops where we helped older women rebuild their self-esteem after difficult divorces, widowhood, or family conflicts. "Isabel," Janet shouted from the kitchen when I told her the news. "We have to celebrate. This is huge." That afternoon, as we prepared a special dinner to celebrate, I realized that I had found not only a new life, but my true calling. Nathan came running from school with his backpack bouncing on his back and a smile that lit up the whole house. "Grandma," the teacher says, "my project on American women entrepreneurs won first place." His project had been about me, about how a 67-year-old woman had started a successful business after a devastating family crisis. "My love, I'm so proud of you," I told him as I hugged him. "But more importantly, are you proud of your grandma?" "Super proud." I told all my friends that my grandma is a famous businesswoman. His words filled me with a happiness I had never known. It was the happiness of being valued, respected, admired by someone who really knew me. That night, after tucking Nathan in, I sat in my favorite garden chair with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the stars. It had been exactly 3 years since Melissa had spat in my face and told me I was a filthy old woman. 3 years since I had made the most difficult and liberating decision of my life. In that time, I had completely rebuilt my existence. I had found my value as a person. I had raised a grandson in a healthy environment, and I had helped dozens of women discover their own strength. But above all, I had learned that self-love is not selfishness, but the foundation of all healthy relationships. Melissa had surprisingly kept her word. For these 2 years, she had visited Nathan every 3 months, always respectful, always grateful, always aware that she was in my house under my rules. Her visits had become moments of genuine joy, not tension. She had been promoted at her job to administrative coordinator, had paid all her debts, had maintained her psychological therapy, and had developed a healthy social life. But most importantly, she had learned to be a mother without being possessive, to love without controlling, to be present without invading. "Mom," she had said on her last visit, "thank you for teaching me that loving someone sometimes means letting them go." One May afternoon, while attending to a new client at the boutique, a woman came in who immediately reminded me of myself 3 years ago. She was about 65, well-dressed, but with a defeated expression, slumped shoulders, a soft voice as if apologizing for existing. "I'm looking for something elegant but not too expensive," she told me in an almost inaudible voice. "For what occasion?" I asked her with the warmth I had learned to use with women I recognized in a state of vulnerability. "It's just that my children are moving me to a retirement home. They want me to look presentable for the interview." Her words immediately transported me to the past. Do you want to move to that home? I asked her directly. Of course not. But my children say I can't live alone anymore. That I'm a burden to them. And what do you think? That they want to sell my house and split the money. But I can't say that because then I'm a distrustful and paranoid old woman. I sat with her in the consultation area we had created specifically for these cases. What's your name? Susan. Susan, are you in command of your mental faculties? Of course. Do you have your own financial resources? Yes, my pension and my savings. Then why do you have to do what your children want instead of what you want? We spent 2 hours talking. Susan told me a story that was like seeing my past in a mirror. Manipulative children, emotional blackmail disguised as concern, constant pressure to make decisions she didn't want to. But I also saw in her something that moved me, the same inner fire that had awakened in me when I finally decided to defend myself. Susan, I told her finally, do you know what you need? What? A lawyer, not a new dress. I gave her the number of Mr. Harrison, who had now specialized in cases of financial abuse toward the elderly. And Susan, one more thing. You are not crazy. You are not paranoid, and you are definitely not a burden. You are an intelligent woman who is being manipulated by people who should be protecting you. 2 weeks later, Susan returned to the boutique, completely transformed. She walked upright, spoke in a firm voice, had a sparkle in her eyes. Isabel, I have to tell you, I followed your advice. Hired the lawyer, and it turns out my children had already made an appointment with a real estate agent to appraise my house without my authorization. And what did you do? I told them I knew their plans, that I had changed my will, and that if they kept pressuring me, they wouldn't inherit a penny. How did they react? At first, they were furious. Then they tried to convince me I was sick. Then they begged me. But I stood firm. In the end, they had to accept that I'm going to continue living in my house for as long as I please. Stories like Susan's had become common in my new life. Through the boutique, I had met dozens of older women in situations similar to mine, and I had learned that elder abuse by one's own children was much more common than people wanted to admit. That's why Janet and I had decided to expand our business beyond clothing. We now offered self-esteem workshops, lectures on the rights of older adults, and a support group that met every Tuesday afternoon. Women with Purpose. It had become a haven for ladies who needed to rediscover their worth after years of family mistreatment. One June afternoon, while leading one of these workshops, a young woman came in who caught my attention. She was about 35, well-dressed, but with an expression of anguish. She sat in the back and didn't participate in the conversation, but I noticed she was constantly taking notes. At the end of the workshop, she approached me with tears in her eyes. Mrs. Isabel, can I speak with you in private? Of course, dear. We sat in my office and she began to cry. I think I'm like the daughter you talked about in your lecture. I think I'm mistreating my mom and I hadn't realized it. Her name was Rachel and her story broke my heart because I saw in her the Melissa of 3 years ago. My mom has been living with me since my dad died 2 years ago. At first, it was temporary, but then she stayed and I treat her very badly. I yell at her. I ignore her. I make her feel like a nuisance. Why do you think you do that? Because I'm frustrated with my life. I got divorced last year. I have money problems. And it's easier to take it out on her than to face my problems. And how does your mother feel? Sad. Very sad. Yesterday, I found her crying in the kitchen. And when I asked her what was wrong, she said nothing. But I know it's my fault. We talked for an hour. I told her my story without judging her, trying to help her understand the damage she was causing before it was too late. Rachel, your mother won't be there forever. And when she's gone, you're going to have to live with the remorse of how you treated her. Do you think I can still fix things? Of course, but it has to be a real change, not just promises. You have to seek help for your problems. Treat your mother with respect. And above all, stop blaming her for things that are not her responsibility. Rachel left with a list of recommended therapists and a promise to return in a month to tell me how things were going. A month later, Rachel returned accompanied by a woman of about 70, elegant and smiling. Mrs. Isabel, this is my mother, Gloria. She wanted to meet you and thank you personally. Gloria hugged me with tears in her eyes. Mrs. Isabel, you don't know how much my daughter has changed since she spoke with you. She doesn't yell at me anymore. She asks for my opinion on things. She treats me with affection. It's as if I've gotten my daughter back. Rachel had kept her word. She was in therapy, had started treating her mother as she deserved, and had stopped blaming her for her own problems. Mrs. Isabel, Rachel told me, you saved me from becoming someone I didn't want to be. These encounters had become the most rewarding part of my new life. Every woman I helped regain her self-esteem. Every daughter who managed to recognize her abusive behavior before it was too late. Every family I saved from destruction confirmed to me that my pain had had a greater purpose. I hadn't suffered in vain. I had suffered to learn, to grow, to be able to help others. My personal experience had become a healing tool for women who needed to know they were not alone, that they had options, that they deserved respect. In August, I received a call that filled me with joy. It was Evelyn, the woman I had met in my early days at the boutique, the one who had come looking for clothes for the retirement home. Isabel, I have to tell you the news. My son officially apologized for trying to force me to sell my house. He's in family therapy and we're rebuilding our relationship. And how do you feel? Free, respected, valued for the first time in years. My son talks to me like a person, not like a child. And what did you learn from this whole experience? That I have to stand up for myself. That no one else is going to do it for me. And that you were right. Love does not mean enduring mistreatment. One September afternoon, while Nathan was doing his homework at the kitchen table, he asked me something that made me reflect deeply. Grandma, did you forgive my mom? The question took me by surprise. Why do you ask that, my love? Because at school, we're doing a project on forgiveness, and I want to understand if you've forgiven everything that happened. I sat beside him, thinking carefully about my answer. Nathan, forgiveness is a very complicated thing. It's not like in the movies where someone says they're sorry and everything is fixed immediately. So, you haven't forgiven her. Forgiveness is a process, my love. Your mom did things that hurt me very much, but she has also made a real effort to change. So, I am in the process of forgiving. And what does that mean? It means that I no longer feel anger toward her. That I can be with her without feeling pain. That I recognize her effort to be a better person. But it also means that I don't forget what happened and that I maintain my boundaries to protect myself, and if she misbehaves again, then I will have to make difficult decisions again. But I hope that doesn't happen, Grandma. I'm proud of you. Why, my sweetie? Because you were brave. Because you didn't let yourself be mistreated. Because you taught me that I have to respect myself. His words confirmed that the most important lesson I had given Nathan was not about forgiving but about valuing oneself. In October, an invitation arrived that thrilled me deeply. The University of Texas had invited me to give a lecture on entrepreneurship in the third age to business administration students. It was academic recognition that my experience had value, that my story could inspire others. On the day of the lecture, the auditorium was filled with 20-year-olds who listened to me with attention and respect as I told them how I had started a successful business at 67 after a devastating personal crisis. Mrs. Chen, a student asked at the end, what would you say to an older woman who is in a situation of family mistreatment but is afraid to defend herself? I would tell her that fear is normal, but that living with fear is worse than facing uncertainty. I would tell her that she deserves respect, that she has options, and that it is never too late to start over. And what would you say to the children who mistreat their parents without realizing it? That they open their eyes before it's too late, that their parents won't be there forever, and that when they're gone, they're going to have to live with the remorse of how they treated them. After the lecture, several students approached me to tell me about their own families, about mistreated grandparents, about parents who didn't respect their elders. I realized that my story had touched something deep in these young people, that maybe some of them would return home with a new perspective on how to treat their older relatives. It was gratifying to know that my experience could prevent the suffering of others. In November, Melissa came for Nathan's birthday. As always, she arrived with appropriate gifts, with enough time to help with the preparations, and with a respectful attitude toward my home and my rules. During the party, I observed how she interacted with her son, present, attentive, affectionate, but without the possessive desperation of before. She had learned to be a mother without smothering, to love without controlling. "Mom," she told me that night after putting Nathan to bed, "I want you to know that every day I'm grateful for the decision you made 3 years ago." Why? Because you forced me to grow up. You forced me to face my problems instead of blaming others. You forced me to become the person Nathan needed me to be. Melissa, do you really think you needed me to leave for you to learn that? Honestly, yes. I was so comfortable mistreating you, knowing that you would always put up with it, that I would never have changed if you hadn't set drastic boundaries, and you don't resent me for making that decision. On the contrary, I resent that it took me so long to understand that I was being abusive to you. I resent that you had to go to that extreme for me to react. It was the first time Melissa had used the word abusive to describe her behavior, and that confirmed to me that she truly understood the magnitude of what she had done. In December, as we decorated the house for the Christmas holidays, Nathan asked me a question that filled me with pride. "Grandma, can I invite my friends to the Christmas party? I want them to meet the coolest grandma in Austin." His request thrilled me deeply because it represented everything I had built. A house full of love, respect, and joy. A house where children wanted to bring their friends because they knew they would be well received. A house where you could breathe peace instead of tension. Of course, my love. This is your house as much as it is mine. The party was an incredible success. 15 children came with their parents, and the house was filled with laughter, carols, and the warmth of a genuine celebration. Several parents thanked me for the hospitality, but above all, they thanked me for the example I was setting for their children. "Mrs. Isabel," one mother told me, "my son talks about you constantly. He says he wants his grandma to be like you when he grows up." Those words confirmed that I had achieved something more important than business success. I had managed to be an example of dignity and strength for a new generation. On New Year's Eve, as Melissa, Nathan, and I had a quiet dinner at home, I reflected on everything that had changed in my life during these 3 years. I had lost a house, but I had gained a home. I had lost an abusive daughter, but I had regained a daughter in the process of healing. I had lost the false peace of submissive silence, but I had gained the true peace of mutual respect. And above all, I had discovered that it is never too late to start over, to defend your rights, to demand the respect you deserve.